So my name is Elizabeth De Leon. I know most of you call me Liz. I'm a board member of the New York Women's Foundation, and it's my pleasure to facilitate our conversation today. The title of it is Movement Building in Latina Communities, which obviously the two panelists that we have that we're very honored and lucky to have today know a lot about. I'm delighted to introduce both Cristina and Monica today, both of whom are impactful women leaders in the Latina community in our country and internationally. So Cristina Jimenez, I know a lot of you guys know her bio and know her extremely well, pero como quiera hay que decir la verdad como es. Así que Cristina is an amazing community organizer, a political strategist, and a storyteller. She is co-founder and former executive director of United We Dream, also referred to as UWD, which is the largest immigrant youth-led organization in the country. At the age of 13, Cristina migrated to the US from Ecuador with her family. She grew up undocumented. Over the last decade, UWD, under Cristina's leadership, has grown into a powerful network of nearly 1 million members and growing, and has played a pivotal role in shifting the politics and the narrative about immigrants and immigration, ultimately influencing not local, but also national policy. Cristina was instrumental in United We Dream's successful campaign for President Obama to sign the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA, into law. In recognition of her work as a social justice organizer, Cristina received a 2017 MacArthur Fellowship, that's like for geniuses, imagínate, the Four Freedoms Award, and a spot on the 2018 Time 100 list of most influential people in the world. Monica. Monica, I'm gonna have to have you give your little bio because lo que tengo aquí no está correcto. Así que dinos un poquito de ti.
Hi, it is so lovely to be in this room. Well, I am one of the founders of Poderistas, and I also have another organization called Justice for Migrant Women, and the Latinx House. And but really, those organizations are part of they're the work that I do. But who I am is I'm the daughter and granddaughter of migrant farm workers, and grew up in the farm worker movement because of my family and their continued connection to farm workers. I live in rural Ohio, so just down the street, we're in the places where my family used to pick crops in the field. So that is my foundation, and have been really, really fortunate to be able to come together with the other co-founders of Poderistas to build this new platform for Latinas. And a lot of our work is focused on building power for and with Latinas, as well as other community members across our country. So just really pleased to be here. So happy to share this space with Cristina, who is in fact a genius, and Elizabeth.
And just to say, my two favorite things is like Cristina's a fellow New Yorker and Monica's a fellow attorney. Así que, loving the connection. So we'll start with Cristina. Cristina, how did United, We Dream come about? What was the conversation you had with yourself, con tu familia, tus amigos? What was the gap you identified? You don't have a blueprint. You don't have anything to sort of tell you what the journey is going to be like. And so what was that process like? Can you share that with us?
Such a good question. And, just first want to get started by saying thank you. So much gratitude. And so honored to be with all of you, with you, Elizabeth, Monica, and all of the hermanas, all the sisters in the chat. I feel the love in my body, and it feels wonderful to be in community and comunidad with all of you. A lot of people think that sometimes, a group of us who were undocumented and young, were clear that we needed to create a nonprofit. And actually, I want to break the myth that that's, absolutely not true. And I think in most cases, it is that way, especially for communities who are impacted by injustice. And for me, as someone who grew up undocumented with the fear of being separated from my family, of being deported for so many years, and after 9/11, I was unable to go to college because some of the policies changed, even in states that are pro-immigrant like New York, where people like me couldn't go to college, and that was one of the dreams of my family when we came here. So I got to meet a lot of young people like me who had grown up undocumented, also living in fear. Many of them who had lost family members to deportation already, and that was just heartbreaking and outraging, and makes you feel really powerless. But in community, when we started getting to know each other and realizing that we could do something together, that we could take action, that we could share our stories, that we also needed to have our own space, meaning that, out in the world, the narrative and the conversation about immigrants, about Latinx folks, about Black people is very criminalizing, is dehumanizing. And you have all these things that are telling you that you're not worthy, that you don't belong here. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to create a space where we belong, where we felt empowered, where we felt visible, where we felt safe and in community. And out of that aspiration, that young people like myself could have a space where they didn't have to fear who they were or feel shame about the color of their skin or shame about their undocumented status, that we could be with each other and be empowered to speak up for our dignity and for our communities. And that's where United We Dream was born. It really came out of that desire, not only to survive, but to actually thrive and to be visible and to be empowered and to create belonging for people like undocumented, communities and families. And that's how United We Dream came about. And, it has become a very large home for thousands, almost 1 million people who now have a place where they don't feel alone and they're not in fear and in isolation, but rather empowered and in community fighting for justice.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you so much. And Monica, a similar question for you. When you're thinking about Poderistas, you identified, and the other co-founders identified, because I know you're like a rock star in the sense that you're like thinking about migrant workers, thinking about women in your family, thinking about women in the community, but thinking about a community at large, right? And so the different generations of women. So you create and identify this platform. How did that, how did you identify that opportunity for us to leverage our voices?
Yeah, so I think that, similar to what Christina is sharing, like it was a series of conversations. It was lots of conversations that happened over time about what it is that we need, what it is that we feel is missing. And also I think for America and Eva, they had taken a trip together along with, Rosario Dawson and a few other Latinas around, one of the prior elections. And they were in conversation about the fact that they felt like they were always being called on at the last minute to sort of step in and say something like 2 minutes before an election, and that kind of led us to have other conversations about how that's always the case, how often Latinas are treated like an afterthought, that we're not at the center, that people, if they think about us at all, it's at the very last minute, and often our needs are not met because there isn't enough deep thinking or planning or strategizing that's happening around what our priorities are and how to meet them. So through the various conversations, the 10 of us who co-founded Poderistas decided, we're not going to wait for someone else to create what we need. We know what we need, and we just need to build it. And so really, the organization is very young. We launched at the end of August of 2020. We started building it in January of 2020, so we built it quickly. And what we found was that when it went live, when the platform went live, we started hearing from Latinas all over the country that it was there was this gap, that we were right on in terms of sensing that we had a platform that was needed for Latinas who didn't necessarily see themselves being reflected, or their goals being reflected in some of the content that they were seeing. So, I think like most things, the organization that we're building is the product of many rounds of conversations, lots of flexibility, the willingness to shift and change as the conversations in the moment requires. And, and I think that is why we have been able to quickly build something, because it's very much based on the input directly from the community. And we're still growing. And so we still have a lot to learn. So we're going to see what it looks like into the future.
I love it. And talking about the future, great segue. Cristina, so you've been part of big historical movements, right? And so at your heart, in the core of you is being an organizer. What are the opportunities that you've identified, in today? We just, we have a new administration. Immigration is a top priority. So how locally, nationally, what have you identified as opportunities?
I think that we are in a very unique moment. And I say that because there's been a lot of painful things that have happened that all of us have gone through together. The pandemic, the years under the Trump administration, where the institutions of our democracy were just attacked relentlessly, and the human rights of different communities were attacked relentlessly. So I think we've gone through a lot of pain together, and a lot of loss in our communities. And I think that makes it unique, because I think you also saw that all of those experiences brought people together. It really highlighted how interdependent and connected we are, regardless of race, background, of which Latin American country you're from or your family is from. It really brought up how connected we are and how we depend on each other to build a better country and a better society for all of us. And so I think that is the opportunity that we have, because as much as we've had pain and loss, we also saw a beautiful uprising for Black lives. We're having a conversation about race and about equity and about healthcare and about the kind of economy and infrastructure that we need in our country, which is a conversation that we haven't had. So I think that we have a big opening to have the conversations about the country that we want to build. The country that was great sounding in the ideals, but that we have yet to realize. A country that is, just and that is equitable for all of us is yet to exist. And I think that we have that big opportunity to do that, to organize and to bring more people, not just those that are already part of the movement, pero más gente, los primos, las tías. Like, when I think of us as an organizer, it's like when my cousins and my tías are part of the movement, I know that we are growing.
That is success.
We are reaching more and more people. So I think that we have, that big opportunity. And the last thing I will say is that, I'm particularly very compelled, especially within the Latinx community, to really speak about racial and economic justice and how our futures and our lives and the injustices that our communities experience are so connected to the experiences of Black people in this country, of Indigenous communities in this country. I'm working on a book that will be published next year. That is looking at this. And one of the things that I share with people is like, did you know that when in California, people started attacking welfare programs and criminalizing Black mothers, Black single mothers, and Black communities, those were the same arguments and the same narrative and the same politics that they were used to attack Puerto Ricanos in New York and their access to social programs, and the same ones that they used to attack immigrants over time as well. So, I think that white supremacy is real, and also racial justice and winning and building a new country is real, and it's a possibility, and that's the opportunity that we have.
Well said. I love that. And so on equity, Monica, so you create this platform and thinking about Latinas and thinking about the fact that Latinas are the lowest paid in the country. We got hit the hardest from the pandemic. So much of this we've heard today, all women, right? We were unfortunately the victims of this pandemic in the most real way. So, how do you see sort of the conversations of equity that have started to happen? How do we use Poderistas? How do we use your focus on migrant workers, and that being the way, women support the family? Like, how are all those things coming together for you today? Talk about a simple question.
Well, I'm here for everything that Cristina said, and that is not a simple question at all. But I think that the answers are a lot clearer now, you know. So we have been among the hardest hit during this pandemic. And I think that what the pandemic has done is two things. It's allowed certain groups of people who have been the most marginalized and made to be the most invisible of our society actually seen. And that is because many community members, many Latinas and other community members have been on the front lines during the entire pandemic, have been holding up our country and ensuring that we have food to eat and that we can go to the stores to get what we need and that we can have the healthcare that we need. I mean, those are just facts. And because we can finally see each other and see those who we couldn't see before, we can also see that the reason that we have been the hardest hit is because we never had the supports that we needed. We never had the rights that we needed. We never had the benefits that we needed. And that is why we have been in such a precarious position during the pandemic. And so for me, I think that with Poderistas and the platform, the opportunity is that now that we have been growing this community that I think now is something like 170,000 Latinas are on the Instagram platform alone, right? So it's a continuing growing community.
Congratulations.
Platforms. Thank you. But so now it's about taking the 170 people who are engaged on Instagram and however many people are, hi Olguita, however many people are engaged otherwise, and figuring out, as Cristina said, how do we organize people? How do we give people the tools that they need to now take action to help change the things that we know we've always been deprived of, or the things that we need to change? And one of the early findings that led us to build the platform in the way that we built it was that there was a body of research on Latinas, and the research found that one of the challenges that we face is a confidence gap. Knowing that we actually make a difference, knowing that our work can actually change things for the better. And what we've seen through the various activations that have been happening across different movements is that Latinas are seeing that we make a difference. You know, we are mobilizing our households and our communities and our workplaces. And I think for us and the Poderistas platform, as we lift up the pay gap and the wealth gap and all the other challenges we're facing, we also are immediately trying to give people tools so that they can take action to address those issues. And it's going to have to be, you know, continuous, and it's going to have to be all of us moving in the same direction, you know, in sync, because we can't let the conversation die down around the ways that we've been left out. Like if we don't at this moment leverage the opportunity to actually take the fact that we have been forgotten over time and do something to change it, then there'll be a huge missed opportunity. And I don't think any of us are willing to let that happen.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God, I love this. Olga,
sorry,
bienvenida.
There's no problem over here, you know, but yeah, I just want to comment. I know that it's finished, our session pretty much, but I just want to come and say hi to Elizabeth and Cristina and Monica. So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit late.
No worries at all. Technology works until it doesn't. Tú sabes cómo es. So
I know.
But thank you for making it, and I want to give you an opportunity. I'm gonna stay on for a couple of minutes if you guys don't mind. Olga, Monica has done an amazing job at sort of filling us in with like how the dream of Poderistas came about and things like that. We spoke about equity, we spoke about the platform and using that to leverage our voices. Cristina also talked about sort of the creation of United We Dream and what that was like. But we've talked about the future. And so I'm throwing at you a little bit of everything for you to be able to choose, you know, how you would like to sort of engage us for the next couple of minutes.
Listen, yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. For me, I mean, I'm sure that Monica has explained this before, but first of all, I'm an immigrant. I'm a Mexican immigrant that I moved here 11 years ago. Now I am a mom, and I'm married to an American, so my baby girl, my Poderista, is going to be a Mexican American. So for me, really having a platform where my baby girl can see herself and can see the you know, the future, like the be able to earn her path and be able to be not afraid to say that she's a Mexican American, but be proud to be Mexican American and to be a Latinx and to be able to speak her language without being afraid. And I think that Poderistas having a platform that just, you know, can elevate every single Latina, not just in Hollywood, across the board, every single communities, all around the US. I think that is extremely important for the future of our Latinas, because if you don't see yourself in someone else, if you don't see that you do that, then you were never gonna do it, right? So, and I think that is extremely important. We were so lucky that, and I was so fortunate as, you know, being with these 9 incredible badass Latinas to build this platform. But again, I think as an immigrant, you need to find your voice, right? And you know, there's a lot of there can be a lot of discrimination within our community for immigrants. So I think that, you know, we need to be able to embrace our immigrants, because there's going to be a lot of like young kids that are immigrants that are new to this community, and we need to be able to accept them and to really be able to say, hey, you are part of this community, don't be afraid. And I think that me being an immigrant and having that, having been able to see other Latinas saying like, oh, there's an immigrant there, so I can do that as well. I can be part of this community as well. So I think that's pretty much what I really, it moves me a lot from the future, what we can get with our platform.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So any final words from Cristina and Monica before we wrap up?
I'll just get started to say so. I mean, we need to keep the conversation going. So much love for you, Monica and Olga, for creating Poderista for all of us. I love that you're doing. I'm so supportive. And, you know, we have a big opportunity to create power and belonging for our community. So, you know, what is your role in it? And how are we doing it together? Those are like the questions, and, you know, to continue doing the work together.
Spoken as a true organizer. She's like, what's your role? What are you doing? Action. Monica?
I just the same. I mean, I think it's really important for us to understand that these organizations and the work that we're doing, it belongs to all of us, and it's on behalf of all of us. And so my invitation is that for all of you who are tuning in, to know that you are part of our family and part of our community, and we welcome you into the Poderistas community, and we hope that we can be part of what you're building too, because that is how we're going to change the world, is by doing it together. And the more that we can link arms and lift each other up, the more likely it is going to be that we all will win. So thank you all for all that you do. And Cristina, Elizabeth, much love. And Olguita, I'm glad you could join us.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I just wanted to say, Cristina, Monica, Olga, mil gracias. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking the time to engage in these critical conversations. Like Cristina said, these conversations need to continue to happen. And again, it's only we touch the surface. But thank you for taking the time. I know you are all busy ladies. And so to all our guests, I want to say thank you for participating in our women's breakfast today and celebrating lo que es ser mujer y lo importante que es, especialmente ahora en este momento. Your support affects real lives. And it's not, you know, when you support a woman, you support a family. I cannot tell you how critical it is, the support that you are giving through the New York Women's Foundation. So on behalf of the board, on behalf of the staff at the New York Women's Foundation, we are forever grateful. Gracias, mil gracias, y continúen celebrando todo el día, el hecho de que el día está precioso afuera. Así que, chao.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto.